Hi guys, so this is our second assignment using some CSS, and I thought I could try and go through with you some of how I might try and accomplish this. So here's the assignment description, and we did some of this in part 1, and if I'm going to set this up, I would go to GitHub, and you guys would fork the assignment description. I'm going to just create a new repository because I already have that, and I don't want to build anything into that repository for the assignment. So I'm just going to hit new and say we'll create a repository with the README file, which you guys will get when you have that forked. And I'm going to copy the address for this and go into VS Code and go to our command palette and do git clone and give our address, which something went wrong with that. And let's see here. Let's pick the place where I want to put that repository and open it. Okay, so here's my repository with my markdown file, my README file. And for HTML assignments, I would, if I were you guys, I'd just kind of pick a way to set these up and just kind of stick with it. So usually when we have a web page, we're going to have our HTML files, which I will just leave in the main directory. We're going to have some CSS files, so I'm going to create a CSS directory, and I'm going to create a JavaScript directory, and I'm going to create an images directory. So now that I've got some directories, I can go ahead and make some files. So we'll start an index HTML, and there's a couple ways you can get some base HTML code. If you either do an exclamation point, you'll see there's an M abbreviation, and that will create some HTML boilerplate there. I've also used HTML5, and just for fun, I actually have never bothered to compare these two. And alright, it looks like those create the exact same thing. So either an exclamation point or HTML5 in VS Code will get you a little HTML boilerplate. For JavaScript, I've usually just create a script file. For CSS, I was trying something out a little bit new. In the past, I have written my CSS files directly, but there is a kind of a CSS aid called Sass, and that has the extension SCSS, and you'll see that down here at the bottom, if you've installed, I'm going to go ahead and click Watch Sass. If you have installed the Live Sass compiler, it will actually watch when you put some code into this SCSS file, and it will actually create this style.css file. Sometimes the way that this SCSS file lets you write things, it's a little bit simpler than trying to write all the CSS out yourself. So I've been trying that this year, and we'll see how much I like it. And the images, I think I had, let me go look in a folder. I had the image file for that already saved. So let's look at okay, so I did have it saved, and I'm just going to put it into this images folder. So there's my image for this. So we need to link up our I'm going to change the name in this title. Just for fun. And we need to link up our CSS file. So if we did link, you'll see that you have a choice to select the CSS, and I did name mine style.css, but it is inside of my CSS folder, so I'm just going to add that folder to the path there. And I need to add a script link to my JavaScript file, and I'm going to say, and I forgot that that is inside of my JavaScript folder. So we're not going to have actually a JavaScript for this assignment, but I would just recommend to you guys to kind of get used to creating these things so that it's just kind of second nature for you. You could just put your index, your style.css, and your script.js file all in the same folder, and that's fine for this class. But if you ever make a website, you'll find that it quickly becomes a lot of files, and it helps to kind of split things up into folders. So I am a little bit of the opinion that you may as well just kind of learn how to do it now and get used to it, and that way if you ever tried to do something a little more complicated, it's going to be a little bit more organized for you. So and we can test things out if we go ahead and put in a little bit of text there. I'm going to save that. And the other add-in that I have installed, which is pretty handy, is this live server. So if you have that installed, you can right click on your HTML file and say open with live server, and it will show you if you make a change once you save it. So if I have this and I made a change to it and save that change, it will actually update this automatically. So I've seen this workflow in some videos, and I like it because you can make some changes and then see how things look. So I think that is a pretty good starting point. And now I'm going to go to the original assignment and go ahead and pull the see where I pull the content from the original assignment into here, and we can just pretend like we're just doing this for the first time. If I can get this to just copy the text I'm looking for, that would be helpful. Okay, so there is all of the content from our original assignment, and we have the description of what they want us to change and kind of what this looks like. So as I try to think about how I might do this, you might notice that this example is actually probably a screenshot of what they were looking for. You'll see that as I shrink things down, that image actually shrinks with the size of the browser that I have open. I think that's a bit of an artifact of the fact that that is an image, because they don't ask us to make it do that. But I am going to go ahead and kind of create an overall container to put this text into. So you guys can bear with me. I don't build web pages for my regular job, so I'm a bit in the same boat as you guys, and I don't always remember all the commands. But one interesting shortcut that I did learn was creating div segments, and if you do a period and then a word after it, that's actually going to create a div segment for us with a class of container. And so I want all of my content to be inside of this. So you'll see that it created that for me, and it gave me an opening and a closing tag, and I'm going to take this closing tag and copy it, delete it there, and move it down to the bottom of here. Another thing that's handy, these are HTML comments, and I'm going to go ahead and move that one down to here. All this text right here. If we have this opening part of the comment, and I'm going to move this down to at the bottom of the comment, and you'll see that's all turned green, and HTML just ignores that. So I'm just going to put all that inside of a comment. Okay, so if I look at our example, this top text here is a top level heading, and then we have a second level heading down, and we need to do some formatting on these things. So I'm going to go ahead and put some tags around that text in my HTML, and I'm going to go ahead and call that an H. Let's see if we can H1, and I think if you use a pound sign and give it a name, that will actually give it an ID. So you'll see we created an H1 tag with an ID, and when we work with our CSS, we can use this ID to refer to this this tag. So I'm going to get the closing tag and move it to the end of our text there. And I think we can make an h2 tag and call it, let's use a pound sign, call it subhead. And use that, and that may let us make an h2 tag. And we can move that over to the end of that and put that in an h2 tag. We do have an image here, so we could probably create an image, and we have the source here, so we can copy. Except we you could just copy that original thing, except I had added it to my images folder and there's only one thing in there, so that let me put that, and the rest of this, let's just put that in an HTML tag. Okay, and if I save that, I should see that we have a good beginning there. We've got some couple heads and our image, and we can move on to the next step. Alright, so if we go back and we look in our example, some of this text is split up into paragraphs, and then we have a bullet list and a link down here. So let's go ahead and put some more tags in so we can get things formatted that way. So so let's see, the first paragraph starts with Langley, and then the next paragraph starts with according to the report. So it looks like they've got, these split into separate lines. So we can go ahead and create some p tags. I'm going to go ahead and just create those. And they need to go at the end of the lines. Since I'm over here, I'm just going to paste those closing tags. And I can just delete those other two. And now that's also going to be a p tag. And then we know that that is a hyperlink, so that's going to be an anchor tag. And I always like to put an extra one in here, a target. Okay, big help, right? I'm working. Thank you. And then we'll just open it up in a new tab, and we can copy this link address. And paste it right there. And this text, we can paste inside of our anchor tag. And then this, we can place inside of a comment so it doesn't show up. And we know that that's going to be a UL tag at the beginning and the end. And okay, so if we save that and take a look, we've got our headings, we've got our image, we've got our paragraphs, and we have a link that takes us to a new tab. So that really, it looks like we pretty much have all our HTML content in there. So now we could probably work a little on our CSS content. Alright, so the first thing I think I'm going to work on is how this is reacting. You'll see in the version that I have that when I make my window bigger or smaller, that text just goes all the way across the page. And if we look at the example here, it hits a certain width and then it just centers in the page, and it actually gets smaller, but so I want to try and make it do that. So I think the way that I can do that is I created a div with the class of container, and so if I go into my CSS page and I do dot container, and I want to set a max width, and we'll try a 1,000 pixels, and if I look that up correctly, let's double check what I looked up. Oh, margin, not border. All right, and let's see what that does for my example here. Okay, so it took me a minute to figure out what was going on. Inside of my SCSS file, I needed to have this text and save it. And then in my HTML file, I needed to make sure I'd saved that. And once those were both saved, you'll notice now that in my example, it hits a certain width, which I set at 1,000 pixels. And then it does not, the text doesn't go any wider, and it just kind of stays centered in the screen. And if you go smaller, then it will adjust. So save your files if you've got live server going, and it should work for you. Okay, so we can work on this H1 header a little bit. So we see that we need to make this centered and dark green, and theirs looks a little bit bigger than mine does. So I'm going to go back into my VS Code, and my H1 has an ID of headline. So if I go into my SCSS file, I should be able to use hashtag and headline with curly braces, and we should be able to try color and dark green, and on the list, font family was Georgia. Font size we'll try 2.5 M's, and text align center. Let's save that, and let's see what that does. So that looks, I think, pretty close. Their size looks maybe even still a little bit larger, but the color looks about there. So I'm going to go ahead and try M, and that looks a little bit closer to me. So I think that looks pretty good. You know, I don't think there may be a right way or wrong way, but I think a lot of times you just kind of have to look and see if you're getting close or not. Okay, so now we need to probably make the subheading a little bit bigger and get that centered. So if we go back into VS Code and look at my index page, the idea for that is subhead. So we'll go back to our style page, Use a hashtag for the ID. Subhead with curly braces, and we can do font size. Let's try 2M, and text align center, and save that. And compared to their page, maybe I should try 2.5. Theirs looks even a little bit bigger than mine. So let's try that. Looks pretty darn close to me. Okay. On the requirements, it said to make the paragraphs have the line height of 25 pixels. So if we go back into our CSS and we want to do the paragraphs, and pixels, and their text definitely looks a little bit bigger than mine. So let's go So they said to use a line height of 25 pixels, but when I look at their spread out, you know, there's still, that's 30 pixels and it's still wider. So just for fun, I'm going to try 50 pixels. And that's too wide. So let's try 40 pixels. That looks pretty close. So they told us 25 pixels, but their image doesn't seem to match that. So I'm just going to leave it where it looks closer to what they have. Let's see. They wanted us to remove the underline from the links. So we can do, our links are the anchor tags. So we can go make a line for our anchor tags, and we can do Let's hit Control S and go look at our example, and we can see that that's not doesn't have an underline under it anymore. Although we can see that all of that text is big, and these were not inside paragraph tags, and you'll see that the text size didn't change with those. So just for fun, let's go put that inside a paragraph tag. Let's see how much that changes that. Oh, guess it'd help if I actually deleted that. And just out of curiosity, that doesn't seem to be doing much. Maybe we could try Alright, so I'm just going to add that to that CSS and go take this extra paragraph tag out. Okay, that still looks pretty good for font size and the space between the lines. Make "you might also like" label uppercase. So "you might also like," let's give that an ID equals, does it need to be in quote, upper? Yep. So let's give that an ID of upper, and then in our style, just keep this with our IDs, upper, and text transform uppercase. Save that, and that is now uppercase. And make the image float to the left of the body content. So let's go back to our CSS and make a line for image and give it a float left tag. And that looks pretty good. Alright, when I was looking at that, we didn't have any spacing around our image, so I'm going to give it a margin, and let's try 1.5 em, and that looks pretty close to what they had there. Pretty darn close. And my image looks a little bigger than theirs. So let me look up how to switch that image size. Okay, so I went and looked, and we can set a max width, and I did 40%, and a max height auto, and that will keep the correct aspect ratio, and that looks pretty close to the image size they have in their example. And let's see, was there anything else they were asked to do? Make an underline appear when you hover over a link. So when we're in on our CSS, we have our A anchor tag. We can set something that we want it to do when it hovers. So we're going to say A:hover, and then we'll say text decoration underline, and if we save that and go to our link and hover over it, the underline appears there. Okay. And make the image float to the left of the body content, and we did that. So I think that looks pretty successful. We've got our files and our folders, and I'm going to go ahead. It looks like everything has been saved, so I'm going to go ahead and go make a message and save that, and then we'll go to our pull, push, and sync. Okay, and now I should be able to go to my repository and refresh it, and it looks like my things have come up. So if I just take a peek in each of these folders, we've got our SCSS, but we've got our CSS file, images, that one pushed up successfully, it looks like. Just for fun, let's go click on it. I think we can see it good. JavaScript file, there's not going to be anything in that, but that's okay. And then our index.html, you can see all of our HTML in there, and we'll hit that. And since this is a web page, let's go turn on GitHub Pages and see if we can see what this looks like. So we're going to go to Settings and Pages and select our source as main and hit Save. And this can go fast. This can take up to 15 minutes or so. So if I click on this link, not found yet, we'll give it a few more minutes, and there, came through pretty quickly. So now we can see our HTML and other code and CSS rendered as a web page directly from GitHub. This is pretty handy. For the assignment, you're going to turn in the link to your your GitHub repository and the link to your site so that I can see both. And if we go into developer tools, so we go into the three little dots, more tools, and developer tools, you can see that we've got our different div items here, our different CSS. If we hover over the body tag, that shows the whole thing. The container tag, and if we go down, we can see more of our stuff. And you can see some of our styles down here. Element. Well, that sure puts a lot of... Oh, so you'll see that's something that Google's added. But we have our div container up here. And if we click on that and expand it, you can see that we have each of our sections. If you hover over the HTML, you'll see what gets highlighted in different parts. So you can see what part is affected. And you can see the CSS. If you click on an element, you can see the CSS that affects that element. So that's pretty interesting. And if we had any JavaScript working, then we could see the console and see if there were any things that printed to the console, but we don't have any JavaScript. So this will let me see what you've put in your HTML files and your CSS. So as we get used to working with this, that's something that we can look at. So I hope this helps you on your assignment. And as you can see, I still have to look things up too. And you just kind of take it one step at a time. I really like the workflow of having kind of a design and then creating the HTML for it, and then going through each element and creating the CSS. And when we get into JavaScript, then we will look at what functionality we want to implement, and we'll just go create the JavaScript to make that functionality happen. So I think that's a pretty good work pattern. It does take a little bit of time, but it's fairly logical. So I hope you have a good day, and we'll talk to you later.